Hi, welcome to Shree's Weight Loss Journey, and it's spiritual. So today, I want to talk about Nepal, right? And then I also want to talk about how, their society has digressed. But there's going to be, extreme changes that's going to occur in that area, in Russia. And actually, let's just keep it real. The full, the solar eclipse that's going to happen in September is going to change that whole pathway. Hopefully their transition will be a lot easier than, the transition that we're having, which is very, ongoing, because they really need it. Okay? Hold on. Okay. So, the short history of Nepal is they are a part of the Himalayas. And there is both Buddhist and Hindu blending in that region. And they had been warring. And as a result of this warring, they have a whole society now of orphans and, old men claiming to be, I guess, their savior, their messiah, or their guru. Okay? And so I was watching this, and because they're going through their festival right now, and in these festivals, these gurus, they come down from the mountains, and of course, they're in full costume, right? Showing that they are, a mountain man. And yet, they were going down to this festival with bags so that they could carry back food and money back to, their community. And people were actually giving it to them. Even while they were traveling, they were allowed to sleep in the temples. And I was like, wow, And the video that I watched, they showed in contrast where, these orphan children and families, right? And most of their families were like women and children, single women and children. Because most of the men that were able to fight in the war, they fought, never came back. Okay? So I was like a little bit upset about this because during this festivity where they were, floating down their wishes with candles or fire on top of these leaves and putting a coin in there, just down a little ways, they had these children that was jumping into the river and removing the coins out of the offering. I was like, wow, how does that work? How does that work? So, and these guys, they would, go and sit Indian style, in these particular podiums, and they would get money so that people would take pictures of them also. So I was like, okay, so then the ritual, evolved into something else at nighttime and during the day. And this is where they were doing a cremation. And basically, if you were cremated publicly, that was something of honor. And I still was like, wow, I'm not passing judgment, but I'm saying, wow, okay? Because these people were very poor. Now, how they showed the majority of these young people, these orphans, these older women, what they would do would be to rummage through the trash, looking for cans, plastic, anything that they can, recycle. Sometimes you can even recycle clothes. Sometimes you can. So, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, this is terrible. Then it showed where this young man was going to a mountain village to ask the slave owners to release their mother, his mother. And of course they refuted, so he ended up sneaking her out in the middle of the night. And he brought her to his place where he lived on a pig farm, managing the pigs and living in a makeshift shed made out of aluminum tin. So she was kind of surprised because I guess she thought that maybe her son was bringing her to come stay with him, and that he was, I guess we would say affluent, right? But I think he kind of felt abundant because he did have a girl pregnant with his child, and I guess he wanted his mother around to help. And also to be freed of that situation that she was in, where, she labored for another family, basically just for room and board. Okay? It's like, well, if you're just laboring for room and board and you're still, living in a barn, you might as well, live with him. I guess that was his thoughts. Okay? So they brought her home, and anyway, they went on to another story. I guess that was a type of success story. So now they have tourists that pass through there, because a lot of tourists, will pass through there wanting to trek up to the Himalayan mountains, to see this, energy, spirituality, and even the trek up there. I think it's like, I can't remember how many feet above sea level it was, but it was in the thousands. It was at least 3,000 or 4,000. Okay, so then it flashed back to me. A download had came to me, thinking that, okay, what we have going on here is, like economic disparity. And the main reason why the economic disparity had occurred wasn't because they were they wasn't able to survive, right? They wanted to be able to do the same things as the super tribe. They want to get away with doing the same things that the super tribe did. They didn't want to acclimate to the super tribe. Okay? And so it made me think about like what's going on in, like our major cities, where, we have all of these adults who are being combative, right? And measures extreme tolerance, have been exhibited so that, they don't wind up with a whole bunch of orphans. Right? I'm like, oh, that's why they didn't just, go ballistic and, just start, retaliating. And of course my guy said yes. And I was like, oh, well, that's very white of you. Thank you. So then my mind started going towards, okay, so you're talking about, a super tribe that has a sense of family, and they're seeming like they're having a problem teaching, other races to value their family in the same way that they value their family. Because when a man doesn't value his family, he ends up becoming weaponized, right? He is like, well, if you're not going to, value your family, then, we're going to weaponize you and, and use you in some kind of way that, you can be useful. Okay? So then I'm like, okay, the most defeated race on the planet is the black people, right? And black people, refuse to evolve, right? The more you try to assist them in evolution, the more they revolve back into outdated, obsolete systems that just, they're not viable today. And you can show them that their system is not viable, right? Some of them have gone so far back, that they think that they had access to utilize the demons of Solomon. Yes, they did. They thought they had access that enables them to utilize the demons of Solomon's using sigils, rituals, and sacrifices. But they don't pay attention that there was a succession, and another succession, up until the point where most of the adults had expired, was terminated in this war, to the point where, they were naming like a young boy to be king, right? And once, they only had a young boy to become king, of course, that was the fall of that whole society, because children are not leaders. Period. They're not. Right? Children are still guided by other people. They don't have independent thought. Some of them aren't even educated. I can't even remember how old they said, who was that king? Anyway, now he does have a place. He does have a place in history. Yes, he does. You'll see Tukman, Tillerman, Tukman, something. And yeah, he does have a place in history. Basically, as a nominated king through bloodline. But he was a young king, and he also died young. So his reign really wasn't that long. So anyway, it had occurred to me that the architects of our society would create a territory for these rebellious people, and they would be priced out. Okay, they will be priced out of being able to be admitted into mainframe society. Now, some will argue that they're already priced out. And I don't know how you're saying that you're priced out when you still have access to enter in. You know, maybe you can't live there. And even some who are living there, they're disgruntled because they can't live there in a highfalutin style. Nor can they live there in rubbish. Okay? So you can only be admitted if, you know, you meet their minimum standards. Right? So then it was like, okay, now people are out here traveling. They're looking for, you know, they're looking for relocation, right? They're looking for relocation within the states and without of the states, right? A lot of them find Thailand to be somewhat pleasing when it comes to like minorities and some of the poor, you know, Caucasians. They will like Thailand. Basically because of the cost of living there. So then it was brought to my thought is, okay, realistically, we're only, you know, we're reflected by the 5 people that we keep in our inner circle. That's the reflection back to us of who we are, right? If the 5 people that you keep close to you are not educated, they're not of integrity, they are not clean, are promiscuous, and maybe even amoral, you know, and I know people don't even know what, you know, morality is. Well, we're mortal beings, right? We are mortal beings. So if you're amoral, then you're kind of anti-moral. Your character is against the survival of moral beings. So if you're against being moral, then you're amoral. If you're thinking that you can define yourself, you know, that's what you call gaslighting. Okay? You call that gaslighting. And it seems like men have become professional gaslighters. that they think that they can say what is true, that they say that what they say is true just because they said it.